Have you ever wondered who makes the footballs used in the FIFA World Cup? Or where that cute stationery set you just bought for your kids was actually made? In this episode, we speak with award-winning journalist Neha Dixit about her powerful debut book, The Many Lives of Syeda X. Through one woman's story, Neha uncovers the hidden world of India's unorganized sector, its harsh realities, quiet contributions, and the systems that remain unseen. Blending investigative journalism with data-driven storytelling, she brings us face to face with the cost of our country's rush to develop. This book made me look at Delhi in a whole new way, and I hope it offers you a similar shift in perspective. Neha, welcome to the reading list.
So happy to be here.
Perfect. So, to begin with, can we get a short synopsis of the book for people who haven't read it yet?
So The Many Lives of Syeda X is essentially a book that looks at last 30 years of India through the eyes of an urban, poor, migrant Muslim woman. And it looks at essentially the lives of the 90% population of India that is struggling now and the kind of consequences that they have felt or they have experienced because of the larger policies up above in the last 3 decades in India.
Thank you for that. Who is Syeda and how did you meet her?
Syeda is a worker in Northeast Delhi. She was essentially a weaver in Banaras, and her loom was burnt down after the Babri Masjid demolition, and that's when she moved to Delhi in 1995. And in the next 30 years, she did 50 jobs and never managed to get more than 1/5 of the daily wage. So, and these 50 jobs include making wedding cards, making hardware, making electronic items, making doorknobs, packaging food items, spices, almonds, dry fruits, making stationery, or the kind of board games that we play. So many of these things that are very important in our everyday lives, not just Saida's life, but everybody else's life. And the fact that many people like Saida are making it in very far away, remote, tucked away corners, not remote so much, but tucked away in corners which are not visible to the other parts of the city or other parts of the country because they're not aesthetic enough.
Yeah.
And so that's what Saida is. And in the book, one looks at not just Saida, but many women like her who are essentially home-based workers, or in popular parlance, they're called peace rate workers. And they are the ones who now are part of they are the ones who actually run the manufacturing in India and also help global companies to outsource their manufacturing here and benefit from it. So that's Saida and her family that have been talked about in the book.
So, to remind our listeners, what is the daily wage right now?
Right now, it changes from state to state, but it should be roughly around 15,000. But again, how to determine daily wage is complicated now, because we used to have old methods of assessing what somebody should be paid depending on 3 categories, which was skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled. Now, I want to understand, like right now in the world that we are living in, particularly when we understand it in terms of gig economy, like somebody who is cleaning cars in the morning, working in the mall during the day, and delivering food in the evening. How do you assess what is skilled and what is semi-skilled work or unskilled work? And similarly, somebody like Saida, who's making tea strainers, who's making soft toys, and who's also making hardware, how do you categorize somebody like her? And so that's how we also need new ways of assessing and determining what the wage should be for people on a daily basis. Yeah.
And she is very skilled, right? The toolkit that she has, that she calls her CV, it's massive. There are so many random things in it, but she's used 50 jobs over 30 years. That's insane.
Yeah.
Okay, so what drew you to Saida's story?
Okay. So I've been a journalist for the last 18 years. I used to work for a magazine, then I started working for a television news channel. And I've repeated the story often, but I would still say it, what happened was that a big corporate group had bought a significant share in the news organization that I was working for. So the marketing team briefed the editorial team saying that from now on, our target audience is going to be the urban rich. So, which means, to cut this long story short, which means that uh, do not talk about, do not report on bleeding heart issues and back of beyond issues, but talk about issues that the urban rich are interested in. So it started with that. So of course, one was frustrated, and I was actually suggested that I should do an investigation on who are the rich kids racing fast cars in South Delhi. And honestly speaking, I have no skills to do such a story or investigation. So, so I realized, okay, I don't fit in here. And that this was also a time when the 2012 anti-rape movement happened, and a lot of news organizations started at least paying attention to stories on sexual violence, even in a very sensationalist way, but at least there was scope to do these stories. And I also started, of course, so this was a time when I realized I don't have these skills that are required. So I started working independently. And I was doing a lot of stories on sexual violence. But there was one story that I want to speak about, which really changed my perspective, was that I thought I was interested in gender. But mostly what people understand when talking about gender is limited to sexual violence. But it is about many, many things. So I had written about these women who had faced sexual violence during Muzaffarnagar riots in 2013 in Uttar Pradesh. And these women had filed these cases. And once they filed the cases and went back to their villages, they had to work in the fields of the same people who had put them through that situation, had perpetrated that violence. So I realized that even I was confining the lives of these women around this episode. But basically, it is just one episode in a person's life. And these are workers, these women are workers, they have various other identities. So that's how I realized that I also need to start going to women workers in India and the lives they lead. And sexual violence is only one part of the problem in their life, but there are many other things. So I started going to Northeast Delhi and Karaval Nagar and many other industrial units close by to meet the women who were working. They were not working particularly in these factories because the nature of this sort of work is, if I can explain that, the multinational companies and even the domestic markets, instead of having a factory and paying a time-based wage and providing basic work conditions, they actually, to cut costs, what they do is they outsource this work to home-based workers like Syeda, who are paid per piece of the things they make. So Syeda and many other women are paid per 12 dozen of things that they make. And so to make, for example, 144 pieces of doorknobs, it can take 12 to 16 hours. But you're still paid per piece, which means
And you're not
that,
paid a lot.
yes, and you're not getting a time-based wage. So that's how Syeda happened. That's how I started learning more. And it took me almost 3-4 years to just understand what is happening.
And so why did you decide to write the book now?
The book actually took 9 years in making. Like, it actually took 9 years. And not because I'm a very... It was mostly to do with my indiscipline, let's say, a little bit, that I was not meeting deadlines, but also to sort of make sense of it. And in these 9 years, one realized that a lot of things that were happening out in the world that we as citizens were concerned, whether it's the socio-economic situations of people of across classes, it could be middle class, it could be the working class, or the fact that the kind of backlash on, the kind of backlash women were facing on the ground. So we keep talking about how, there have to be all these programs about women empowerment. But basically what we actually need is to teach men how to deal with those empowered women. Because that's why violence happens, because you can't deal with these assertive women. So that, and along with that, the possibility of having economic independence for a woman, which is so less. And even if it's there, you're always struggling. So all these things together told me about what was happening in India the last 10 years and how the kind of repercussions it had on the lives of women on the ground, like Syeda. So that's how the book happened.
So even though we didn't get that story about those rich kids in South Delhi racing,
Yeah.
we got a really good piece of literature.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. So the Many Lives of Syeda X, it kind of reads like fiction sometimes, right? But it's rooted in fact and real, true events. Was this blend of writing, storytelling, and fact, was this intentional?
So I don't have a very aesthetic, tidy answer to this, except that there are 2, 3 things. One is the fact that traditionally, my training as a journalist, traditionally we were told to write stories in a very straight-jacketed, factual way. Right? So he said, she said, this happened, that happened, and the 5 W's and 1 H that we are trained in. And one realized that when you tell bigger stories about people, to make other people feel that this is really important and we need to know this. Sometimes I feel that limitation of writing stories in a very straight-jacketed way doesn't work. And when you say that it's written like fiction, I actually feel like all stories, they shouldn't be like non-fiction, or this kind of writing shouldn't be compared with fiction, because actually all storytelling should be done in this way. So that the people you're talking about, when I say that, for example, there was a recent study that told us that if you earn more than 1 lakh per month, you are in the top 10% of India's population. That really says so much about how 90% of the India is living in. But when I tell you this, most people are like, okay, it's some figure or some number. But when you actually, a lot of times you are told as journalists, put a face to the things that you're talking about. Yeah. And so when you talk about Syeda and her life over 30 years, there is so much. But if you keep interjecting with very sort of factual things, then it breaks the narrative and people sort of get lost and they don't want to do it. So that's one. And number 2, I always say this, we were initially, a lot of us who think that we are feminists or we are whatever. I had the habit of always using words like patriarchy and sexism and misogyny and something. And my partner told me that try and write 5 sentences without using without using these words. And so that really helped. So that's also why the book has been written like this, because there are so many things in the last 30 years that are being spoken about, or so many things in Saida's lives which are very technical but also very important. But the challenge was how to ensure that anyone who's reading it gets more intrigued, or at least starts paying attention next time they're on the road and at a traffic signal buying a toy or a balloon, to know somebody has made it, who that person is.
Yeah. And by not using that very charged language, you have been able to appeal to a wider readership and get the word out about these circumstances in these industries and these people that we don't see. But we use things they made every day.
I also want to say that also came because I have been teaching journalism for the last 10 odd years or more. And unfortunately, I come across quote unquote young people, not saying it in a condescending way, but I come across students who don't read at all. And so the challenge is how to make those people read. And I realized and so, these days there's a lot of conversations that long form doesn't work. But I regularly meet people and students and everybody who binge watch. So long form does work, but there has to be some method of putting it, which if you're really interested in talking about things on the margin, we have to put it out somehow, not for the market, but for the people in the world that we are that we care for. Yeah.
So you've been able to, in a very balanced manner, put forth very important and deep instances in somebody's life, and you've dispersed it with events that have happened in our country that have been very pivotal in such a seamless manner. I absolutely love that, like every few pages there was a major event in the country, in the world happening, and then you're juxtaposing that with what's happening in Saida's life or what she's making right now, and that's how you're connecting them. And that, for me as a reader, as like this book is happening as I'm growing up,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That really helped me root the book in our reality that I may not have been aware of because I was 1, I was 2, I was 3. How is reporting Syeda's story different from the other journalism that you've done?
So, like I said, in the last 18 years, essentially, I was initially looking at very straight jacketed investigative stories. He said, she said, sort of a thing, and reporting very factually. When I started freelancing in 2012, is when I realized, oh, you can, I realized, okay, you can do long form because when you get paid per word, you get paid more. So that's how it started. But then a lot of assignments came to me, which I thought, why am I going to do it? For example, once somebody reached out to me from Smithsonian saying, will you write about this fossil park in Gujarat? And I was like, why will I write about a fossil park?
That sounds so interesting.
Yeah. No, but you have these notions about your work and your ideas, right? And then they said, we're going to pay you like so many dollars per word. And I said, yes, immediately I'm going to do it. And I realized when I went there, I realized, oh, this is not just like a park with dinosaur fossils, but there is a princess who's taking care of this park, and there's so much to say. So those are the kind of things that came to me that I realized, okay, you can weave in multiple stories. There are multitude of like various layers to a story, and it's not just covering crime or covering gender or covering health. There are so many things, or science, for example. So that's how it happened. And this book is a culmination of what I did in my last 13 years of freelancing and what I learned. For example, in Syeda's story also, I remember I had once reported about, I'd written a news article about a person who had survived mob lynching in Palwal in Mewat. And so after that he was depressed, and he had a prosthetic leg. All of those things had happened, and so he was unable to hold on to a job regardless of how much activists tried to help him. So there was a story in the village around him, which was that he is possessed by a jinn. So I was like, oh, great. So I have to come back and wrote the story. When I wrote the story and I sent it to my editor, next day I see it is published, but it's like every nice thing in the literary thing in the story has been cut out. And it has been put out as a very like straight-jacketed, this happened, that happened, and that happened. Inside the story, in this writing, I was thrilled because I could use the conversations around jinn and jinneries, which are female jinns in the book. So, which you can't do in a news story. So, for example, like all the Radio Wali, a person in the book, she ends up living in a place in Chandni Chowk, which was actually Begum Samru's palace. So it's Bhagirat Palace now, one of the biggest electronic markets in Asia. She talked about how when she was living there and all the women were thrilled listening to her stories, and one day they saw like one woman in white robe and all the jewelry and gems and everything, and they used to often spot her ghost. And the possibility of being able to use it, or the fact that Reshma, Syeda's daughter, when she works in a mall, she is told that the third floor is always colder because jinnery, female jinn by the name of Priya lives there. And she teaches, or once in a while prods all women to stand up for themselves. And I was like, wow. And this is not just my own. Of course, I'm fascinated by it because I grew up in the age of Ramsey Brothers with all your Purana Mandir and Virana, which was really crazy. But these are the conversations people have on a daily basis. And the possibility of not judging people when they find comfort in some story, or some story that brings them joy or some excitement, if they're not harming anyone, we have to normalize these stories because that's how they exist in our lives.
Yeah, your eyes are sparkling as you're talking about these jinns. No, but those stories, I think you've included them in the book, right? And they're also really nice comic relief, I guess, in a way, to very heavy things that are going on around them. But then it also gives you a glimpse into how anytime we're talking about women, or maybe a different depressed class, standing up for themselves, they cannot own that standing up for themselves. So we need to give the onus or the responsibility of it on somebody else to say, oh, this made me do it, right? Because our structures are such that how dare you stand up for yourself?
But that's what people from privileged sections also do, right? They often attribute it to some ideology or something that they believe in. And so sometimes they justify their action by saying, oh, because I believe in this
that's
needs to
why
be
it
done.
happened. Yeah, but no, I really enjoyed that, and it made your characters more real for me. I know they're obviously real people, but then they make them jump out of the page because you see how somebody's thinking and how they're approaching life. And then after Nisha is able to move out, Radio Valley is able to move out of there, she goes, sets up her own house, but then these stories follow her, and the women are enamored by them, which I thought was so great. Okay. We've talked about how Saida's story is not just hers, right? It's about millions of women that she represents, but it's also about her family and the other women in her life. Now, through these 30 years in the book, there's a lot happening. And all of these people, women, men, her children, have to go through a lot, right? They also have to stand up against a lot of structures of bureaucracy, of cultural norms, of patriarchy. I know that's a big one to mention, but they do stand up against them. Now, do you think, as you were doing your research, did these people think of what they were standing up against, or did they just want to exist? Because as you're reading the book, you see them standing up to a lot of struggles, but then overcoming them, or just not processing what's happening and just being like, okay, I need to exist. Do you think they think about any of this?
So, not just Saida and the people in the book, but generally a lot of us. Maybe some of us get the time or actually are inclined or committed to do some sort of self-introspection. But I would say not just Saida or people who are on the margins, most people do not sit back and think why they are doing what. A lot of those things are driven by your immediate situation. So I may be on the road and somebody pulls me down for being a woman driver. And in that moment, I may say, how can you say that? I may be standing up for myself. I may be challenging that person's sexism, but I may not have thought about it. And that's how life is for most people, right? Because when you stand up for yourself in that opportunity, you actually, or in that moment, you are actually deciding in that moment how things can work or you can survive, like you said. So I'll give an example. For example, Saida, I mentioned it in the book. She said that, so her loom was burned down after the Babri Masjid demolition. Her house was again burnt down in the Delhi riots. And she is a poor woman in Delhi who's often targeted for her religious identity. It's not something that she actively, her Muslim identity is not something that she actively sort of asserts. But every once in a while, she's targeted for that. And still, Saida said, that when I wake up every day, I don't think of defeating the parties that are against my religion. I wake up to think, how am I going to earn enough money for groceries and milk? And that sort of summed up everything for me. Because what essentially happens is when you're actually always forcing people to survive, to exist that day, there is no possibility, time, leisure, or the space in the brain to think about the larger world or the structures that exist around us and whether we like them or not like them. That is something that is of key value here to me. At least I learned from it. Because what happens is that people often think that, oh, if I'm a woman, I'm always thinking of challenging patriarchy. If I'm a person from working class, I'm also always thinking of challenging my employers. If I'm a person on the margins, I'm always thinking of challenging people who are pushing me in on those margins, but that's not life.
Syeda has faced many challenges. Her family's faced many challenges, and the people around her have. How do you interpret their resilience in this situation?
See, there are, like I said, resilience is not something which is planned or decided. You become resolute and you resist because you have no other option but to be that, right? So if if your loom has been burnt down and you're not getting any work, you have to move and find work. If you are like a lot of women in the book, initially when I started meeting women and I asked them, do you work? They would say no. And I used to say, no, but I can see you stitching these footballs. And they would say, no, this is just to buy groceries for today, or this is just to buy milk for today, or to pay for children's tuition. And so when I realized that basically women, two things. One is the fact that women are conditioned to do so much of unpaid work that anything that you do, you think this is not work, this is just something on the side. Right? So you always end up undermining your own work and thinking that, can this be paid work? It shouldn't be. Am I entitled to any kind of payment for this? Should I even ask for it? Is that going to offend someone? So you don't call yourself a worker. And second thing is also that I realized that a lot of men that I would meet in these same areas would sit unemployed the whole day till they are paid a time-based wage for 8 hours, 250 rupees. So what that meant was, men have a higher sense of self-worth. So till you don't get the bare minimum you think you deserve, you are not going to take up any work. But for women, because there is added pressure of taking care of your children, of your family, making sure there is some food for the people to eat at home in the evening, you take up whatever bare minimum comes your way. So that is also something. So what you're basically doing is making do with whatever is coming your way. And that is something that is extremely sort of, let's say, it's not being actively resilient, but you're also being resilient. So these are situations that make you do that. For example, in Reshma's case, Reshma is Syeda's daughter. I've often said this. Initially, when I used to go and meet Syeda, Reshma would always keep her distance from me. And it's that thing, right? You know, when you are like, oh, you are friends with my mother and I don't want to know you. Until like 2-3 years later, she said, oh, you are so fond of her? You think she's great? I'm going to tell you what she's like. And then she starts telling me about how in all these years, and that's the case with piece rate workers because these are all women. Most of the time when they do 12 to 16 hours of work making things, they're always assisted by one more member in the family, and that's always the daughter. So while Syeda was doing these 50 jobs, Reshma was always assisting her.
Reshma was also doing 50 jobs.
And Reshma was the only person amongst her 3 siblings who finished school, unlike her brothers. And still she said, you know, for their birthdays, she would make sure at least she buys a tiny cake. But for my birthday, she would make halwa. And essentially, and various other acts of, you know, the kinds of discriminations people feel, but they're not acknowledged. And Reshma felt that throughout. And so she always had that complicated relationship with her mother. And Reshma decides, I'm not going to do this when I grow up and I'm going to go to college. And I'm going to work in a mall because that is the aspiration. I do not want to work in a cramped room for 16 hours with my family around me, but I want to work in a mall which is air conditioned, where I get to wear my pants and shirt and t-shirt and whatever my uniform is and go to the mall and be there for 10 hours, 12 hours. So she got a job as a bathroom attendant, which again Syeda looks down upon. But Reshma's like, so what? I work in a mall. So the aspirations are completely different, and it's also generational sort of a shift. So I can't really say that the resilience, Saida's resilience or Lalita's resilience or Radio Wali's resilience was less or more, but Reshma's resilience was different according to her generation. So she was less shy of accepting that she is the primary breadwinner of her family,
Yeah.
which Saida for the longest time couldn't say. So
Yeah.
there are all those complications at work.
And Reshma is also more industrious, right? She does do the work and then she does ask for the money also, right? I remember reading when demonetization happened and how she helped all of the neighbors, but she took a cut.
Yes.
Because she knows she needs to, and she's providing them help that they really need. And this is something that she can leverage. So she's thinking about it in that way, which Saida never did. And none of the women of Saida's generation do. And that shift in looking at work as everything you're putting in, not just unpaid. You need to be paid because you are dedicating. Like Reshma's taking time out of her school day to help Saida. But Reshma's not getting anything out of it. And Saida's getting the bare minimum. But Reshma realizes that. And I love the shift that happens or it's not even a shift, it's a contrast between the kinds of work that Reshma will consider doing, the kinds of jobs that Reshma is looking out for now, and the kinds of work that Saida is always looking for. There's a marked difference. And they both don't understand why the other does what they do or why they continue to do what they do. But they do. And then Reshma does become the primary breadwinner, you're right. I really enjoyed seeing that difference and that growth in the family and that eventual acceptance, because you can't change it, right? Like her father also doesn't say anything at this point. He's like, karo jo karna hai, ab aap hi ho hamare paas. It was great. Saida moves to Delhi from Banaras. It takes her some while to find that social safety net, friends, people that she can just exist with, right? And then she eventually does at Nisha Radio Valleys. We've spoken about Nisha already. But how common or uncommon is it for people who move to a different place to find this sort of group of people that they can literally just exist with and not do anything?
You know, this is something that is often like several times talked about in the context of migration or internal displacement, right? The first thing that happens is that you don't have the social cushion and the familiarity of the people that you grew up with or existed with. And so that's something not just specific to Saida, but anybody who moves from one place to the other. And it could be across castes, classes, gender. And so for Saida also, initially because she moved in 1995 after, struggling, and this was also a time after the demolition of the masjid and her loom was burnt down, was when the markets opened up and power looms had started coming in. And so, like, there's a rough estimate that said that one power loom displaced 30 handloom weavers. So that's the number. So when she came to Delhi, initially when she wanted to work, she realized that, like she says that, I didn't know anyone here, so I couldn't leave my children with anyone, right? At back home in Banaras, you could just leave them with a neighbor and go out. That wasn't the case here. Something as simple as that. Or like she finds somebody called Kamla in Chandni Chowk who speaks in a similar accent as hers, the Purabia accent. And so the fact that, they say, lots of people talked about Saida. When I spoke to them, they said that when she was in Banaras, she would talk about all kinds of things. Like she was literally a chatterbox. And then she was reduced to speaking in monosyllables. Because first is you're always struggling. You are troubled by your immediate circumstances. And second is you don't find people who can relate with, or people who provide you the comfort or give you the emotional space, hold out that space for you to be yourself. So like you said, it was much later. So every once in a while, Saida found friends. And so in Chandni Chowk, she found Kamla, who was also a woman who would clean spices and introduced Saida to do that work. And then she moves to this place called Sabhapur, which was, again, I was really thrilled to know about this place because it's actually a village which is half in Delhi and half in UP. And so I was like, wow, this can happen. And the fact that it is half in UP and half in Delhi is the reason why so many of these industrial units, these manufacturing units could be set up, and lots of migrant people could find work. And this is in Jamna Par, which is Yamuna Par or Trans Yamuna. And that's when there is that famous joke that I mentioned in the book where they said that, Delhi people always say and always sort of talk about who their father is. But in Jamna Par, everybody says, oh, all our fathers own factories. So we shut up. But the kind of factories that exist are sort of more equal in nature. So in Sabhapur, Syeda found Razia, who's also from UP, and Syeda started calling her Sufi, Razia Sufi, because Razia would always be like, oh, don't be embarrassed. Your children are hungry and I'm going to bring you food. And Syeda realizes, oh, somebody doing stuff for me without being told to do. And that is the comfort that Syeda every once in a while was looking for, but hardly got, till she moved to Karaval Nagar, where she met Radio Wali, and where there was just a space for women to come and sit. And like I've mentioned in the book, they say that, like, a lot of them said, we just come here to take a nap. And I said, what do you mean by taking a nap? And I said, Are, when you're at home, they say, Are, TV chala diya, Are, ye kaha hai, wo kaha hai. So you basically can't even take a 30-minute nap. But here, when you come and take a nap, everybody knows that you're trying to take a nap and let you be. So those are the kind of spaces that do not exist, particularly also because women find less spaces where you can trust others, where you are judged less. And also the fact that there are hardly any places where you can walk in without the mental load of having to do something to keep it going. So that space really helped Syeda. And that was also the reason where lots of women actually then, when they started meeting regularly, helped them get the confidence to ask for better wages when they were cleaning almonds. And that so my learning also was from this incident was that often we want people to challenge, to resist, to revolt, to ask for better. But till you do not provide a space where they can actually come and be themselves without being judged, they won't think, or they won't have the confidence or the support, or they won't build enough solidarity to come together and ask for a systemic change. So that is absolutely, absolutely essential. So in that way, it was really nice to find that Radio Wali managed to create this space, but she also managed to create this space because she was not a married woman.
Yes, she had that freedom. She had that space to herself. So the book shows us very different versions of urban India, urban Delhi also, right? And even this entire conversation we're having there, it's kind of like a us and them, right? Because their reality is really not our reality. It's not the kind of life, but it's also not the kind of Delhi that we are ever going to experience. Or you obviously did because you were researching, you know, as a journalist, you've been doing this. But what does this existence of our Delhi and the rural-urban divide, the urban villages Delhi, what does that tell you about this dichotomy in India's aspiration to become a developed country, but also the very sharp inequalities that exist within our society? How did you navigate those?
So, Ashwin, there was a recent report that said that only top 10% of India has enough money to buy non-essential items.
Wow.
Right. So, which means that the 90% population in this country is always trying to earn enough to survive. And that's so much. So I grew up in Lucknow, and there's always this initially when I came to Delhi, I also had a lot of biases. Some of them continue to remain.
Towards Delhi or against Delhi?
Against Delhi, which is, I feel that, first of all, a lot of Delhi people think that Delhi is North India. It's not. right? So so that, and all the other conversation about Delhi is always like, अरे चांदनी चौक का खाना और ये पड़ोस की गलियां, and then either it's like, अरे parliament and India Gate and prime minister and this and that. But who are the people who run this city? And Delhi is actually a country in itself, right? Or the fact that, I don't know if these figures are updated, but amongst all the lakhs of people who come to Delhi every day, 35,000 people stay on and never go back. So every day you're adding 35,000 people.
Wow.
So, and who are these people? Right? And they're across classes and across castes. And we never get to hear about that part. The fact that in the popular conversation about Delhi, we may be talking about Khadi Bawli and we may be talking about spice markets, but we don't talk about the fact that it has many of its markets are manufacturing areas are amongst the largest in Asia. We do not talk about it because that manufacturing is done by people who are again on socioeconomic margins. So what I'm saying is that this invisibility is actually deliberate.
Okay.
Right? To not talk about most people, whether in India or whether, coming back to your question, to in Delhi. There is actually a concerted effort to invisibilize the people who are on the margins and their problems, so that we can create this picture that how India is such a great developing economy. And recently there was a lot of debate about whether it's the fourth largest GDP or
Whether we've
third
crossed
largest or
Japan or
whatever,
not.
right? So that to me is a problem. The fact that I also, during the book, and I'm not away from the people who were ignorant, when I started working on the book, I realized that every possible thing that I use on a daily basis is actually not being made in the factories that I think that are being, the factories where manufacturing is done. They are done by people like Syeda. So if I'm using a pen and a refill with a spring in it, somebody is putting it together. If I'm buying decorative items to put on my Christmas tree, somebody is making those Santa dolls. If I'm buying packed popcorn for Lori, somebody is packaging it. If I'm buying all those marigold garlands to put on the door on Diwali, somebody is making it. If I'm buying soft toys on the traffic signal, somebody is making it. If I'm buying Ludo or chessboard pieces, somebody is again making it. If I'm using embroidery on my clothes, somebody is doing it. So every possible thing in my life is being done by somebody who is not getting even 1/5 of the daily wage. And I don't know about it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that. Remember that famous example that everybody says, where children think that veggies are just there in the supermarket. Where do they grow? You don't know, and it's okay not to know. It's that situation actually. So there is an attempt to do this and not talk about most people.
By who?
By the government, by the people who want to again cater to that 10% who has money to spend on non-essential items. If, like, I'll give you an example. Initially, when I used to go and meet a lot of women in Karaval Nagar, and not just women, families, in the evening when they would come back home, they would do tadka in a little bit of oil, cook potato curry, have it with rice or roti. In the last 9 years, I have seen the same people doing tadka in water, and in the katori, in the bowl that they serve their children, they put 2-3 drops of edible oil over it, because the prices of edible oil are so high. So the fact that people are anyway living on carbs and potatoes, not even veggies, forget protein and meat or anything, and then they can't even put the bare essential fat required for your body. And most of the people on the socioeconomic margins, the only asset they have is their body. Because the only work available for them is hard labor.
Yeah.
And if they're eating this, how are they going to survive? So that's what I'm saying, that it's nowhere in conversation. Public interest in our public discourse is absolutely missing from all quarters. Whether it's governments who want to make a certain narrative about India without providing enough facts to say that it's actually true, or whether it's the media who's actually. And I'm not even, it's all very old school now, television journalism and the kind of ads they make. Everything has moved to influencers and Instagram, right? But the fact that even there, nobody, hardly any influencer is interested in talking about public interest, because you are not going to get any collaboration from them or any money, right? So that is the nature. And if we don't actually stop and think about putting public interest in the center, or being committed to it as people, as citizens of this country, and then demand it in policies, or then demand some kind of accountability for people who shape this public discourse, it's not going to happen.
Were there any instances as you were researching that you decided not to include in the book?
There were, see, couple of things Syeda took her time to tell me, right? So, like I said, like I spoke about Shahzeb, I did not know for the first 4 years that she had another son. When she told me about Shahzeb, I was like, of course, I have to go back and write about it. So I come back and I write about it. And then few months later, she said, but in 2010, when these Indian Mujahideen people were caught from Karawal Nagar, Shahzeb was also picked up. I said, what? So information came to me in bits and pieces, depending on the degree of trust Syeda had in me, and how it increased or decreased whenever. So that's definitely so that was not what I was deciding, is what Syeda was deciding. Or, for example, Lalita was deciding. Initially, when I thought I'll write the book, the book will be both about Syeda and Lalita. But nice. Lalita eventually stopped talking to me because of the kind of things that had happened, and she did not want to alert her family, and she was not opening up, and Syeda did. So again, I decided, okay, let me just focus on Syeda and her family. A lot of things I kept in the book, like you've said, I've changed the names of most people in the book. People who live in Karawal Nagar, people who live in Chandni Chowk, Sabhapur, or Banaras. That's because I had ethical constraints. Ethically, I had to think, what is it in the telling of the story is important, whether the real names of these people, or the fact that I am telling what the lives of most people are. So that is a decision I had to take, because Syeda and her family, her husband Akmal, her sons, a lot of them have been unlawfully detained, charged with cases that are untrue, or are facing life threats, because Shahzeb running away with a woman who's from a different religion. So all these reasons were the factors that helped me decide whether I first want to use different names for the people that I'm writing. And secondly, also a lot of things that were personal, for example, personal in nature, that were not relevant to the story. So those are the things that one was very careful of while writing. And also the fact that the kind of conversations Syeda and many other women had with me. So I also took a decision, because as a reporter, like I said, we are all trained to not put the I in the story till it's really relevant and important. And so Syeda and Radio Vali, Lalita, many other women in these 9 years had all kinds of conversations with me, which were actually fantastic. And maybe they, if they were included in the book, there was more to be said about the world that we were living in. But I realized I am not relevant to the story, and so which is why I also kept myself out from that. So basically, the idea was to make sure that there is enough dignity, respect, ethics, and also taking questions of safety and security into account, and then tell whatever is important for the world to know.
So you mentioned Lalita. So let's give our listeners some context. Lalita is a friend, a colleague of Syeda that she meets at Radio Valley's. And Lalita's family doesn't know that she works, right? Because according to them, women from good families, quote unquote, don't work. They stay in the house. They don't earn a living. But Lalita works. Does Lalita still work?
Hmm. Okay, let me answer it differently. Uh, Lalita was from the Musahar community in Bihar.
Mm-hmm.
She was from a family of farm workers. Musahars are still earlier and still uh, uh, subjected to the worst forms of caste discrimination and even socioeconomic marginalization, despite the fact that they're the largest community to provide farm labor within certain parts of Bihar and otherwise as well.
Mm-hmm.
But because this was in the 90s when there was a lot of backlash against the upper caste landlords.
Mm-hmm.
And so to curb that backlash, the upper caste landlords formed a militia called Ranveer Sena, which would actively go and attack marginalized castes like Musahar. And so this was a time when Ranveer Sena was particularly targeting pregnant women from marginalized castes to say that their population shouldn't increase.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Lalita and her family moved to Delhi because they were scared she was pregnant then. And Lalita, because she came to Delhi and her husband found a job. But let me just say, these things are really, really complicated. Sometimes in the aspirational world, whether it's, the kind of social mobility you want because of uh, the class or the caste, the templates that you see of a better life
Mm-hmm.
are often elitist and casteist. And so Lalita's husband and his brother, both of them had seen that uh, a better life is a family where the women stay at home and the men work, because upper caste women for the longest time were not allowed to go out and work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why women from marginalized castes had no option but to go out and work, and which is why they were subjected to violence by upper caste men. So that's where good family, bad family comes in, right? Good
Mm-hmm.
family because our women don't go out. And any woman who goes out is not from a good family. So which is why you can subject her to violence. Which is the same conversation about women being in public spaces. The fact that you feel entitled to attack or a woman in a public space comes from that thought. So that's where the good family conversation comes in. So initially, Lalita, when she came to Delhi, she didn't work. But then she saw crisis at home. And so one of the conversations which happened during demonetization, which is supposed to be comic, was the fact that a lot of housewives have a lot of cash that their families don't know about. And that cash was because either they were saving up from the monthly budget or they were doing some work on the side. And so that's how a lot of women do. Like, I don't know, like a lot of us continue to get these messages, or you see when you go to a bus stop or when even on the internet, which says ghar baithe paise kamaye, which is now after COVID, work from home is like normalized. But earlier, ghar baithe paise kamaye was mostly targeted at women at home.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always some crisis and you're always trying to fix that without disturbing the larger sort of thing where the man is taking care of the family and everything is fine. So Lalita started working in this almond cleaning factory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to explain this work very briefly, basically a lot of almonds in across the world is produced in the Western world,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in California, North America. And so the almond actually, when it's produced, it is sent to countries like India for the breaking of the shell manually. Because when you break the whole seed that you get is because somebody is manually breaking it. If you break it with a machine, or if an unskilled person breaks it, you break the almond. So, which is why a large proportion of that work is outsourced to women in India. And Syeda and Lalita used to work in these almond factories. Now, factories, when I say, is what the word workers use for that workplace, but technically it's not a factory. It's basically a small, dingy room where women come in through the window and they are there for 12 hours. And for cleaning 123 kg bag, they were paid 40 rupees at that time. And almond cleaning also requires a lot of expertise because, like I said, you break it. And there was also a joke in Karawal Nagar which said that women who work in almond factories learn to eat with fork and spoon. And that was because cleaning and breaking the shell actually requires you to dip it sometimes in acid, sometimes using some instruments, and that sort of wounds your fingertips. So you can't eat Indian food with wounded fingertips because of the spices. So you start eating with that. And so Lalita and Syeda, that they start working together at this place. Now, like I said, Lalita does this for the longest time. And then at Radio Wali's place, something happens and they just decide that they want better wages. And Lalita said, "Oh, I don't want to be part of this because my family is going to know about this."
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of situation that a lot of women face. Like every once in a while now we see, and it comes from the systemic sort of discrimination where, if a guy does not do anything, they will be given some capital to start their own business or open a shop, right? But the fact that every year after year we see women doing better in school and CBSE result and 10th result and 12th result is also because that is the only option for the women to do something with their lives. Nobody is going to be given any capital to start with. And so the same thing across classes, if you see, a lot of women are often again ridiculed. And I see all these reels now which are funny, but they're also sad in a way that they talk about how every woman wants to open a boutique from home. But that is also because that is the only possibility available, where you can be at home and you can do something which is not so intense and that kind of thing. So the same thing applies here. So Lalita, if she works now or not, is something I can't say. But most women are living those lives to uphold this model that everything is fine, but also doing something on the side which is basically does not acknowledge their labor. Yeah.
And that work that they do, the almond work, for example, it's a very particular skill that they require, right? And it takes us back to earlier when you were saying, when you're trying to calculate daily wage, how do you quantify that skill that somebody has, and how do you realize what you can pay them to live in the in the situation that they exist in the economy that we have right now? But connecting that now with the supply chain, right? So the almond workers get the almonds from California. They come here. They need to be deshelled. They need to be cleaned. They need to be packaged. The 2009 almond workers strike, that's the first time that we actually see the scale of involvement the home-based workers have in the global supply chain of almonds. And I guess almonds in India are so common, right? Every wedding, you get almonds. Something like happy is happening, you get an almond. When you're going to school in the morning, your mom will give you almonds soaked in water so that it's good for your brain. Almond oil. Almond is everywhere in our country. But we don't acknowledge who is producing it, who is giving it to us in that form, ready for us to eat. But that strike that they did was so important. But it didn't really make the news. People didn't know about it. I didn't know about it until I read the book. And then another version of that happened last year when they went back on strike. But again, the outcome of it was not significant or not significant enough to move the dial in how much the workers are earning. Why do you think that is?
See, there are a couple of parts to it. Like as we speak right now, a lot of Amazon warehouse workers are protesting to demand better work conditions because they are sitting in warehouses which are extremely hot, or the fact that a lot of gig workers are also protesting because they are supposed to deliver food and items within a specific time limit, and it's extremely hot and there's traffic and all of those things, and so they're demanding better sort of work conditions, better wages, and better safety mechanisms. But we don't hear about it in the mainstream public discourse, right? Because why should you talk about workers, right? So that's systemic, let me just say that. But the other thing about almond workers strike is, see, there are two aspects to it. One is the fact that, in Karaval Nagar, or even, and this is, I'm talking about 2009, but even 2025, this is a world where you don't know how to mobilize workers together, right? For example, if Saida is making pressure cooker parts, and Lalita is cleaning almonds, and someone else is stitching school bags. You're all doing different things. You don't have a single workplace. You're making different items and you're paid differently. Now, how do you mobilize these people together to demand better work conditions? There is no common factor in a conventional way. Similarly, go for gig workers right now. Uh, there is no common platform except saying that they work for this app, right?
Yeah.
But you may be doing different things. You may be servicing ACs, and you may be doing some sallow work for people and something else, and you're doing different things, and there is no set wage that people need to be given. And so in this strike, what was extremely important in my takeaway and my learning was that basically a lot of activists tried to mobilize people at a neighborhood / mohalla level. So we are all in the same mohalla and we are making different things, but we are all workers. Let's just acknowledge that. And then let's come together and demand better work conditions. So that is a template that all of us need to start using if we want better working conditions for people. Like you and I are doing different things. We are all gig workers in many, many ways. But how do we demand something better when there's no some standard or commonality amongst us? So that's one thing. The other thing is, like you said, they were getting 40 rupees for a 23 kg bag. And when they came together, it was a strike that went on for a few weeks. And finally, like you said, it's skilled work. So the factory workers did try to outsource that work to some other workers, but they would end up breaking the seeds. So they realized, oh, we have to give it back to the same people.
Yeah.
And so what happened was that for 50 rupee to 40 rupee that one home-based worker gets paid for a 23 kg bag, when the suppliers send it back, they get 1750 rupees. That is the kind of margin that we are talking about. Right?
1750.
Yeah. So, and that is happening because some people are not getting paid enough.
Yeah.
And after the strike, they say, okay, we'll give you 10 rupees more. So that was 50 rupees. So Reshma again, she taunted and she told her mother, oh, you did so much, whatever drama and all this fuss only for 10 rupees. And Syeda turned around and said, yes, that's roughly how, so much money to buy groceries for 15 days. But more importantly, somebody heard us and somebody did change something a little bit.
Yeah.
And this almond worker strike actually increased the global rate of almonds because this was in December, and the Western world, because they celebrate Christmas and New Year, so they'd use almonds quite a bit. And so there was huge demand. So, but the more important thing that strike or any such experience in life does is, when Shahzeb or Saida's other son Salman were frequently picked up by police, which often happens in this country, poorer men, and particularly if you're from specific communities and socioeconomically marginalized, you're picked up more often. Because of the strike, Saida now had the confidence to enter the police station and question.
Yeah.
So it may not be, the impact can not always be quantified in wages. The impact can also be seen in terms of how it changes you as a person, right?
Yeah.
So that was also something so essential and important.
And it gave them the confidence to organize again.
Yes. Yeah.
And the outcome of that, good, bad, whatever it was,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So what did Syeda and the women around her teach you as a journalist, but also as a woman?
Oh God. I feel that as a journalist, I think I understood that there are so many complex layers to anything that we are reporting and writing about. And so you can't really divorce gender with politics or social justice or health or labor. Everything is connected, or with poverty. And it helped me, Saida and many other women helped me look at the whole picture and not just one thing. And as a woman, I learned that, the what is essentially most needed is to have a support system of women who you can trust, who you can rant to, who you can vent out to, and who are not going to judge you. And that support system does not come because I desire it and I want it. It comes because some effort goes into building that support system for yourself. And as women, we are often told to ignore the circumstances or our friends or our relationships and prioritize the quote unquote the family. And so, which is why, like, somebody told me once that I was visiting someone and they said that औरतें अपने बचपन के दोस्त नहीं रख पाती. Women cannot stay in touch with their childhood friends because often, lots of women are married off, sent away, do not have the wherewithal to stay in touch. Now maybe there is internet, so only some certain section of women can stay in touch or at least look those people up. But most of the women were not allowed that time or leisure to go and stay in touch with their friends. And that is something I learned, that it's absolutely, absolutely necessary to have your own people who every once in a while just hear you out. So that was helpful.
That makes me very aware of my privilege and access to resources and technology. Because all of my closest friends are my bachpan ke friends, are the people that I've known since I was 3 years old. Wow, I've never been more grateful for them. Okay. What do you hope your readers take away from the book?
I feel that the only thing I wish, it does not have to happen, but I wish that people start paying attention to the things that we make, use, observe the people who are around us. So the fact that I'm using a camera and a cord, somebody is making it and somebody is packaging it in that plastic wrapper and putting it in a cardboard box, and somebody is packaging it in a warehouse and delivering it to me. So it's not happening on its own. There are real people who are doing this. Or the fact that if I am on the road, there are people on a cycle, there are people who are doing deliveries, there are people who are carrying cart rickshaws, driving them with big iron rods for construction. And the kind of desensitization that most people experience and most people are sort of have trained their minds to ignore. Maybe they just, I'm not saying stop it, but I'm just saying just be more aware of how you are responding to people when you are honking at a person who's carrying those iron rods in their cart rickshaw in this 50-degree temperature. I think just that bare minimum can just change a lot of things around us. I just hope.
I think that's a very small ask. And I think, yes, people will definitely take that away from the book. Have there been any responses to the book that have surprised you? You can't say the long list of the award because I think it's earned.
Can I just say one thing? When I came to Delhi for college, I hadn't read any full-length English book except like the first book which was prescribed in college, which was Pride and Prejudice. I grew up reading a lot of Hindi pulp and Chacha Chaudhary and whatever. So I had never thought that I would write a book. So the fact that I have written the book and it has come out, and now some people tell me that they have read the book, that to me is a big surprise in itself. So everything from that moment to now is a bonus. And I still feel, oh, you've read my book? How can you read my book? So I'm feeling that way. And yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so are you still in touch with Syeda and her family?
I'm in touch with Syeda and her family, and they have just bought a piece of land and they have done some construction on it. So yeah, they're good. And
they're good. They've survived demonetization, yes. COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody's fine. Everybody has work.
Yeah.
Earning better.
Earning better.
Amazing. Okay. So What's next for you?
Uh, I don't know, but I actually, having written this book, I it's like tasting blood. So I do want to write maybe another book. When, I don't know, but yeah. I actually I want to go back to the ground, do some more reporting, meet more people, and then try and understand what is it that I want to write and what is it that needs to be written. So maybe I'll do that.
What's the story you're working on right now?
Um I'm looking at women in North India. That's what I can say. Yeah.
Very generic, not
Yes.
Delhi though. Delhi's not North India, apparently. Okay, let's do a rapid fire now. What's one book that you wish more journalists read?
I think all journalists should read The Other Side of Silence by Urvashi Butalia, primarily because, of course, it's a classic, but primarily because it helps you understand how to pay attention to oral histories and how to include that in your work, which is absolutely important because most of the people on the margins, their history and their memory does not get documented in words. And it's only orally what they can tell you. So it really helped me.
Got it. What was the last thing you Googled?
Yesterday, I Googled this Titan submarine and everybody involved with it and all the dream projects billionaires in the world have.
Very fascinating. Okay, what is a story that you want to tell but haven't yet?
There are lots of stories I want to tell, but I think I'll be sued and I already have a lot of cases against me, so maybe I won't.
Okay, maybe not that then. Okay, are you a old school pen and paper kind of person or
Yeah.
you work? Okay.
So a lot of note taking is done with pen and paper. And of course, I write on the computer, but I don't use online docs. I use the old traditional Word doc. Yeah.
That's fair. So I think so do I. Okay. Describe the many lives of Syeda X in 3 words.
90% of India.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That is very succinct and very apt. Perfect. Neha, thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you so much.
such a informative conversation for me. Even though I read the book thoroughly, I still learned so much more from you. For our listeners and viewers, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation and you took away something more from it. If you did, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And also go out and buy the book, read it for yourself, and you will learn so much more about Neha's work and Syeda's life. Thank you.